Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt the sting of being ignored? It could be a text left unanswered, a cold shoulder at work, or even silence from someone you deeply care about. That moment when you realize you're being ignored, it hits like a punch, doesn't it? It feels personal, like an attack on your worth. But here's the thing. Often it's not about you. It's about them. Yet, how you react in that moment is what truly defines the outcome. We live in a world where connection is instant, yet misunderstandings are rampant. When someone ignores us, our minds go into overdrive trying to decode the silence. Is it rejection? Disinterest? A power play? Or maybe they're just busy? The possibilities seem endless, but there's one certainty. The way we respond has the power to either heal or deepen the wound. Here's where most of us go wrong. We react impulsively, overanalyze, or worse, match their silence with silence. Sound familiar? It's okay, we've all been there. But today I want to share a roadmap with you. There are 5 critical mistakes you must avoid when you're ignored. These mistakes can damage your relationships, self-worth, and even your peace of mind. By avoiding them, you'll not only regain control, but also learn to handle these situations with grace, confidence, and even power. So stick around, because this isn't just about navigating moments of silence. This is about transforming how you perceive rejection, building unshakable self-respect, and creating stronger, healthier connections. By the end of this, you'll see that being ignored is not a weakness or a loss. It's an opportunity to grow. Ready to dive in? Let's start with the first and perhaps most common mistake: overreacting and seeking instant validation. Mistake 1. Overreacting and seeking instant validation. Have you ever been in a situation where someone ignored you, and you felt an overwhelming urge to do something, anything, just to get their attention? Maybe you sent another text, left a voicemail, or even confronted them directly, asking, "Why are you ignoring me?" It's an all too common reaction driven by that sinking feeling of rejection. But here's the hard truth. Overreacting and seeking instant validation is one of the quickest ways to lose your sense of self-worth and worsen the situation. Let's take a moment to unpack why this happens. When someone ignores us, it creates a void. That void is unsettling because we naturally crave connection and closure. We start to wonder, did I do something wrong? Are they upset with me? Did I offend them without realizing it? Our minds race with possibilities, most of them negative. And in that rush to fill the void, we act impulsively. We reach out, we demand answers, we try to force a response. But here's the question: does it ever work? Most of the time, overreacting pushes the other person further away. Imagine being on the receiving end of a barrage of messages or confrontations. Does it make you want to engage, or does it feel overwhelming? More often than not, it's the latter. The harder you push for validation, the more you appear needy or desperate, and that energy can be repelling. Now, let me ask you this. Why is their attention so important to you? Why does their silence have the power to shake your confidence? When we react impulsively to being ignored, we're often seeking more than just a reply. We're seeking validation. We want reassurance that we matter, that we're valued, that we're enough. But here's a profound truth. That validation doesn't come from someone else. It comes from within. When you overreact, you hand over your power. You allow their silence to dictate your actions and emotions. And let's face it, how many times have you looked back on an impulsive reaction and felt regret? Maybe you sent a long, emotional message in the heat of the moment, only to wish later that you had waited. It's a lesson we've all learned the hard way. Acting out of desperation rarely brings the outcome we desire. So what's the alternative? How do you stop yourself from overreacting when every fiber of your being is screaming for action? The answer lies in 3 words: pause, reflect, and respond. First, pause. When you notice the urge to act, whether it's sending another message, making a call, or confronting them, take a moment to step back. Breathe deeply and create space between the impulse and the action. This simple pause can be transformative because it allows your emotions to settle. Remember, emotions are like waves. They rise, peak, and eventually fall. If you act at the height of your emotional wave, you're likely to make a decision you'll regret. Second, Reflect. Ask yourself, what am I really trying to achieve here? Are you seeking clarity or are you seeking control? Are you acting out of genuine concern or are you reacting out of fear of rejection? Reflection helps you get to the root of your emotions, allowing you to respond from a place of clarity rather than impulsivity. Finally, respond if and when it feels appropriate. But here's the key. Your response should be rooted in confidence, not desperation. Instead of demanding answers or chasing their attention, express yourself calmly and respectfully. For example, you might say, I noticed we haven't been in touch lately and I wanted to check in. Is everything okay? This kind of response shows maturity and emotional intelligence. It opens the door for dialogue without putting them on the defensive. But what if you don't get a response? What if their silence continues? This is where detachment comes in. And no, detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop trying to control the uncontrollable. Their silence is not your responsibility. What is your responsibility is how you interpret and respond to it. Let's bring some Stoic wisdom into this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Their silence is an outside event. You cannot control whether or not they choose to respond. What you can control is your mindset. Instead of internalizing their behavior or reacting impulsively, choose to focus on your own growth and well-being." Overreacting and seeking instant validation is often rooted in fear of rejection, fear of being forgotten, fear of not being enough. But here's the thing. Fear thrives on attention. The more you feed it, the stronger it grows. When you choose to pause, reflect, and respond mindfully, you starve that fear. You reclaim your power and remind yourself that your worth isn't tied to someone else's actions. Now, let's be real, this isn't easy. Breaking the cycle of overreaction takes practice and self-awareness. But every time you choose patience over impulsivity, you're building emotional resilience. You're proving to yourself that you can handle discomfort without losing control. And that's where true strength lies. So the next time someone ignores you, resist the urge to overreact. Instead, pause. Reflect. Ask yourself, what would my best self do in this moment? And then act in a way that aligns with your values and self-respect. Because at the end of the day, their silence doesn't define you, your response does. If this resonates with you, take a moment to like this video. And if you're ready to stop overreacting and start reclaiming your power, comment number 1 below. Don't forget to subscribe for more insights on navigating relationships with confidence and clarity. Together, we're building a community of growth, resilience, and self-worth. Stay tuned because in the next section, we're diving into a mistake that hits even closer to home: internalizing their behavior. Trust me, this is one you won't want to miss. Mistake 2. Internalizing their behavior. Have you ever caught yourself spiraling into self-doubt because someone ignored you? It starts with their silence, but soon it turns into a mirror reflecting every insecurity you've ever had. You wonder, what did I do wrong? Was I too much? Or maybe I wasn't enough? The silence becomes deafening, and in that noise you start to question your value. Sound familiar? Here's the truth. Internalizing someone's behavior is one of the most dangerous things you can do, not just in this situation, but in life. Why? Because it gives them unearned power over you. It allows their actions, or lack thereof, to dictate how you see yourself. Let's be clear about one thing. Your worth is not determined by how someone treats you. Their silence does not define you. But why is it so easy to fall into this trap? Why does their behavior feel like a reflection of who we are? The answer lies in our deep-seated need for acceptance. Humans are wired for connection. When someone withdraws their attention, it feels like they're withdrawing approval, love, or validation. And because society often teaches us to seek external validation, it's easy to mistake their silence as a verdict on our worth. Let me ask you this. Have you ever thought that maybe their silence has nothing to do with you? What if they're dealing with their own struggles, their own chaos? What if they're overwhelmed, distracted, or simply unaware of how their actions affect you? In most cases, this is the reality. People are often so consumed by their own lives that they don't realize the ripple effects of their behavior. Yet we make it about us. we let their silence echo as self-doubt in our minds. Imagine this scenario. You send a heartfelt message to a friend sharing something vulnerable, and they don't respond. Hours turn into days. You begin to dissect every word you wrote, every tone you used, convincing yourself you've offended them or come across as needy. The reality? They were busy with a family crisis they didn't feel ready to talk about. But because you internalized their silence, you spent days agonizing over a narrative that wasn't even true. This is why it's crucial to separate their actions from your identity. Their silence is just that, theirs. It belongs to them, not you. And here's a powerful question to ask yourself. What if their behavior is a reflection of their struggles, not my shortcomings? This shift in perspective changes everything. It allows you to approach the situation with empathy instead of insecurity. It helps you see that their silence isn't necessarily a rejection. It's often a reflection of their internal battles. But I get it. Detaching yourself from their behavior is easier said than done. How do you stop internalizing when every fiber of your being feels like the silence is shouting accusations at you? The answer lies in grounding yourself in your own value. One of the most transformative lessons from Stoicism is this: you are not responsible for others' actions, only your response to them. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. In moments of silence, when doubt starts creeping in, remember this: their behavior is an outside event. Your peace, your worth, and your self-perception belong to you. They are within your control. Here's a practical exercise to help you break the cycle of internalizing their behavior. When you feel yourself spiraling, take a piece of paper and write 2 columns: what I know and what I assume. Under what I know, write down the facts, just the observable truths. For example, they haven't replied to my message in 2 days. Under what I assume, write all the stories your mind is creating. They must be upset with me, or I must have done something wrong. When you look at these 2 columns, you'll notice how much of your anxiety stems from assumptions, not facts. This awareness helps you take a step back and see the situation more clearly. Another powerful tool is self-affirmation. When someone's silence triggers self-doubt, counteract it with intentional self-talk. Remind yourself of your strengths, your values, and your accomplishments. For instance, you might say, "I am a kind and thoughtful person." Their silence does not change that. Over time, this practice strengthens your inner voice, making it harder for external actions to shake your confidence. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. What if their silence is about you? What if they're upset or disappointed? Even then, internalizing their behavior is not the answer. Instead of letting their silence erode your self-esteem, approach the situation with curiosity and courage. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Maybe there's an opportunity for growth, an area where you can improve. But remember, self-improvement should come from a place of love and self-respect, not shame or self-doubt. When you stop internalizing their behavior, something remarkable happens. You free yourself from the need to control how they feel about you. You stop bending over backward to win their approval. And in that freedom, you rediscover your power, your ability to define your own worth, regardless of how others treat you. So what's the takeaway here? The next time someone ignores you, don't let their behavior define your narrative. Resist the urge to turn their silence into a story about your flaws. Instead, see it for what it is, a moment to ground yourself, reaffirm your value, and approach the situation with strength and grace. And let me ask you this: are you ready to stop internalizing others' behavior and take back control of your narrative? If so, I want you to hit the like button right now. Comment number 1 if this resonates with you, because this is your moment to rise above self-doubt. And don't forget to subscribe and join this community of growth and resilience. Together, we're rewriting the way we approach relationships, one step at a time. Now that we've tackled the dangers of internalizing behavior, let's move to the next critical mistake: escalating the silence. You won't want to miss this, because this one has the power to either repair or completely destroy your relationships. Mistake 3: escalating the silence. What do you do when someone ignores you? Be honest. Do you ignore them back thinking, fine, if they're not going to talk to me, I won't talk to them either? Maybe it feels like the right thing to do in the moment, a way to protect your pride, to show them you're not going to be the one chasing. But here's the question. Does that approach ever really solve anything? Escalating the silence is one of the most damaging mistakes we can make when dealing with being ignored. It creates a vicious cycle of miscommunication and resentment. They don't talk, so you don't talk. Days turn into weeks, and before you know it, the relationship is fractured. Why? Because silence is like a snowball. It grows larger and heavier the longer it rolls. Let's break this down. What happens when you mirror their silence? On the surface, it might seem like you're winning by holding your ground, but in reality, you're feeding a toxic dynamic. By refusing to engage, you send a message, not just to them, but to yourself, that the relationship isn't worth the effort. And here's the kicker. Most of the time, the original issue that caused the silence remains unresolved. You've added layers of complexity without addressing the root cause. So why do we escalate the silence? Often it comes down to ego. When someone ignores us, it feels like an attack on our pride. We think, if I respond, I'll look weak. I'll seem desperate. But let me ask you this. What's stronger, letting your ego dictate your actions or having the courage to take the first step toward resolution? Escalating the silence also stems from a fear of vulnerability. To break the silence means putting yourself out there, risking rejection, and possibly facing uncomfortable truths. But vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's a strength. It's the willingness to prioritize connection over ego, to seek understanding rather than conflict. Here's an example to illustrate the point. Imagine a scenario where a close friend suddenly stops responding to your messages. You feel hurt and confused, so you decide to stop reaching out altogether. Weeks go by, and neither of you says a word. Eventually, you run into them at an event, and it's awkward. Both of you unsure how to bridge the gap. Later, you find out they were dealing with a personal crisis and didn't know how to talk about it. Your silence only added to their sense of isolation. What could have been resolved with a single conversation turned into weeks of unnecessary tension. This is why escalating the silence is so dangerous. It assumes the worst without giving the other person a chance to explain. It shuts the door on empathy, leaving both parties stuck in their own assumptions. And here's the harsh reality. When you choose silence as a weapon, you're not just hurting the other person, you're hurting yourself. You're carrying the weight of unresolved emotions, allowing them to fester and grow. So what's the alternative? How do you stop the cycle of silence without compromising your self-respect? The answer lies in proactive communication. But let's be clear. This doesn't mean chasing after someone who repeatedly disrespects you. It means approaching the situation with clarity and compassion, seeking resolution rather than retaliation. The first step is to examine your intentions. Are you breaking the silence because you genuinely want to resolve the issue, or are you hoping to win by making them feel guilty? If it's the latter, pause. Approach the situation from a place of sincerity, not manipulation. Remember, the goal is not to prove who's right or wrong, it's to understand each other. Next, choose your words carefully. Instead of accusing them or demanding an explanation, express your feelings in a non-confrontational way. For example, you could say, "I've noticed we haven't been in touch lately, and I miss our conversations. Is everything okay?" This opens the door for dialogue without putting them on the defensive. But what if they don't respond? What if your attempt to break the silence is met with more silence? This is where resilience comes into play. Understand that you've done your part by reaching out. The ball is now in their court. If they choose not to engage, that's a reflection of their capacity, not your worth. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is accept that not all relationships can be salvaged. However, in many cases, breaking the silence does lead to resolution. It allows both parties to air their feelings, clear up misunderstandings, and move forward. Even if the conversation is difficult, it's far better than letting the silence fester. Think of it as pulling out a splinter. It may sting in the moment, but it prevents a deeper wound from forming. And let's not forget the long-term benefits of choosing connection over escalation. When you take the initiative to resolve conflicts, you strengthen your relationships. You show others and yourself that you value communication and respect over ego. Over time, this builds trust and mutual understanding, creating a foundation for healthier interactions. Now, I want you to take a moment and reflect. Is there someone in your life right now with whom you've escalated the silence? What would happen if you reached out today, not to blame, but to understand? Could it be the first step toward healing a fractured connection? If this resonates with you, I encourage you to take action. Don't let silence become the default language of your relationships. Like this video if you believe in the power of communication. And comment number 1 below if you're ready to break the cycle of silence in your own life. Remember to subscribe to this channel for more insights and strategies on building stronger, healthier relationships. Together, we can transform the way we navigate conflict and connection. Stay tuned because next we're diving into one of the most destructive patterns of all: overanalyzing every detail. You won't want to miss this. It's a game changer. Mistake 4. Overanalyzing every detail. How many times have you found yourself replaying a conversation in your mind, dissecting every word, every pause, every inflection? When someone ignores us, it's natural to try and find meaning in their silence. But what starts as a simple curiosity can quickly spiral into overanalysis, an endless loop of what-ifs and imagined scenarios. Let me ask you, has overanalyzing ever brought you peace? Or does it just make the silence louder? Overanalyzing is like quicksand. The more you struggle to make sense of the silence, the deeper you sink into confusion and frustration. You start to question everything. Was it something I said? Something I did? You scroll through past messages searching for clues. You create elaborate narratives in your mind, each more dramatic than the last. But here's the truth. Overanalyzing doesn't give you answers. It only amplifies your anxiety. Let's explore why we fall into this trap. When faced with uncertainty, the brain craves resolution. It wants to close the loop, to find an explanation that makes the situation feel less chaotic. But in the absence of real information, the brain fills the gaps with assumptions. And because we're wired to protect ourselves, those assumptions often skew negative. They must be upset with me. They don't care about me. I must have done something wrong. Sound familiar? But here's the catch. Silence is ambiguous. It doesn't inherently mean anything until we assign it meaning. When we overanalyze, we're not uncovering the truth, we're projecting our fears and insecurities onto the situation. This is why overanalyzing feels so exhausting. It's a mental tug-of-war between what we fear and what we hope for, with no clear winner. Imagine this. You text a friend, and they don't reply. Instead of letting it go, you spend hours replaying your last conversation, wondering if you offended them. You consider sending a follow-up text, but worry it might seem pushy. So you wait, and while you wait, your mind runs wild. By the time they finally respond with "Sorry, I've been swamped at work," you've already spent days torturing yourself over a scenario that didn't even exist. This is the cost of overanalyzing. It steals your peace of mind and replaces it with unnecessary stress. But what if I told you there's another way? What if, instead of trying to decode their silence, you chose to focus on what you can control? The first step is recognizing when you're overanalyzing. Pay attention to your thoughts. Are you replaying the same scenario over and over? Are you crafting stories without evidence? If so, pause. Take a deep breath and remind yourself, I don't have all the information yet, and that's okay. Next, challenge your assumptions. When your mind starts to spin a negative narrative, ask yourself, is this true? What evidence do I have to support this thought? More often than not, you'll find that your fears are based on feelings, not facts. By questioning your assumptions, you create space for a more balanced perspective. Another powerful tool is shifting your focus. When you catch yourself overanalyzing, redirect your energy towards something productive. Go for a walk, call a different friend, or immerse yourself in a creative project. This isn't about distracting yourself. It's about breaking the cycle of rumination and reminding yourself that your world doesn't revolve around their silence. But what if you feel the urge to seek clarity? What if the silence is eating away at you? and you need to know where you stand. In these moments, it's important to approach the situation with honesty and respect. Instead of demanding answers or making accusations, express your feelings calmly and directly. For example, you might say, "I noticed I haven't heard back from you. Is everything okay?" This opens the door for communication without putting them on the defensive. Now, let's talk about what happens when clarity isn't an option. Sometimes, no matter how much you want answers, the other person simply isn't ready or willing to provide them. In these cases, acceptance becomes your greatest ally. Acceptance doesn't mean you're okay with being ignored. It means you acknowledge the situation as it is, without trying to force a resolution. This is where Stoic wisdom can guide you. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Their silence is an outside event. Your response to it is within your control. Overanalyzing often stems from a need for closure. We want to tie up loose ends, to make sense of what feels unresolved. But here's the reality. Not every situation will provide closure, and that's okay. True peace comes from within, not from external validation. When you stop overanalyzing, you reclaim your energy. You stop pouring it into narratives that don't serve you and start using it to nurture your own growth. So how do you break free from the cycle of overanalyzing? Practice mindfulness. When your mind starts to wander down the rabbit hole of what-ifs, bring your attention back to the present moment. Focus on what you can see, hear, and feel right now. This grounding technique helps you step out of the spiral and reconnect with reality. And remember, overanalyzing is a habit, and like any habit, it takes time to change. Be patient with yourself. Celebrate small victories, like catching yourself mid-spiral and choosing to let go. Each time you resist the urge to overanalyze, you're strengthening your mental resilience. Now, let's take a moment to reflect. Is there a situation in your life right now where you've been overanalyzing? What would happen if you chose to let go of the need for answers and focused on your own peace instead? Imagine how much lighter you'd feel if you stopped carrying the weight of assumptions and embraced the freedom of not knowing. If this resonates with you, I want you to do two things. First, like this video, because taking steps to break free from overanalyzing is a powerful act of self-care. And second, comment number 1 below if you're ready to let go of assumptions and embrace clarity. Don't forget to subscribe for more insights like this, because together we're transforming how we approach relationships and self-worth. Stay tuned, because in the next section we're tackling the mistake that hits close to home for so many of us. Neglecting your own life. Trust me, this one's a game changer. Mistake 5. Neglecting your own life. Let's talk about something we're all guilty of at some point. Losing ourselves in the effort to win someone's attention. When someone ignores us, it's easy to make their silence the center of our world. We spend hours analyzing their behavior, checking our phones for a reply, or even putting our own needs on hold to accommodate their absence. But let me ask you this. When you neglect your own life, who's really winning? Because it certainly isn't you. Neglecting your own life when someone ignores you is more than a mistake. It's a disservice to yourself. Why? Because every moment you spend fixated on their silence is a moment you're not investing in your own growth, happiness, and purpose. You're handing over your power to someone else, letting their behavior dictate how you live your life. Why do we do this? Why do we let someone's lack of attention consume us? It often comes down to fear. Fear of losing them. Fear of being alone. Fear of not being enough. And while these fears are valid, they're not productive. They keep us stuck in a loop of self-neglect, where we prioritize someone else's approval over our own well-being. Think about this. Have you ever canceled plans, skipped your hobbies, or put off your goals because you were waiting for someone to notice you? Maybe you stopped going to the gym, delayed that project you were passionate about, or ignored your own friends just to be available for someone who wasn't giving you the same energy. If that sounds familiar, know this, you're not alone, but it's time to break the cycle. Neglecting your own life doesn't make someone more likely to notice you, it only makes you less fulfilled. When you shrink your world to accommodate someone else's silence, you're sending a message to yourself that your own needs and dreams don't matter. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Here's the key. When someone ignores you, the answer isn't to shrink, it's to expand. Instead of waiting for their attention, focus on becoming the best version of yourself. Redirect the energy you're wasting on them into something that fuels your soul, whether it's your career, your passions, your health, or your relationships with people who genuinely value you. Now, let's talk about how to do this in practice. The first step is to take inventory of your life. Ask yourself, what areas of my life have I been neglecting because of this situation? Maybe it's your physical health. Maybe it's your friendships. Maybe it's that dream you've been putting off for someday. Write it down. Seeing it on paper can be a wake-up call, a reminder of all the things you've been sacrificing for someone who may not even realize it. Next, set specific, actionable goals to reclaim those parts of your life. For example, if you've been neglecting your fitness, commit to going to the gym 3 times a week. If you've been ignoring your friends, reach out and plan a catch-up. If you've put a project on hold, block out time in your calendar to work on it. These small steps add up, reminding you that your time and energy are valuable and that they belong to you. Another powerful shift is to reframe the way you see their silence. Instead of viewing it as a rejection, see it as an opportunity. Their absence creates space in your life, space you can fill with things that truly matter. Instead of asking, why are they ignoring me? Ask yourself, what can I do right now to make my life better? This mindset shift turns their silence into fuel for your growth. Let me share a story. A woman I know spent months obsessing over why her partner was pulling away. She stopped going to her yoga classes, ignored her friends, and even started missing deadlines at work, all because she was consumed by his lack of attention. One day she realized she was no longer living her life. She was living in reaction to his silence. That realization was a turning point. She started going back to yoga, reconnected with her friends, and even got a promotion at work. And here's the twist. When her partner saw her thriving, he reached out, wanting to reconnect. But by then, she realized she didn't need his validation. She was already complete. This story illustrates an important truth. When you focus on your own life, you don't just feel better, you become magnetic. Confidence, independence, and purpose are incredibly attractive qualities. People are drawn to those who are fulfilled and self-assured. So when you stop chasing their attention and start prioritizing your own life, you're not just improving yourself, you're also shifting the dynamic. You're showing them and yourself that you're not defined by their presence or absence. Now, let's address a common fear. What if focusing on myself pushes them further away? This is a question rooted in scarcity, the belief that their attention is limited and fragile. But here's the reality. If someone truly cares about you, they'll be drawn to your growth, not threatened by it. And if they're not, then perhaps their absence is a blessing in disguise. Either way, you win. One of the most empowering things you can do is create a life so rich and fulfilling that their silence becomes background noise. Imagine waking up excited about your day, surrounded by people who support you, pursuing goals that light you up. In that scenario, does their lack of response still hold the same weight? Probably not. So here's my challenge to you. Take back your time, your energy, and your life. Instead of waiting for their attention, give yourself the attention you deserve. Make a list of things you've been putting off and start checking them off one by one. Celebrate your progress, no matter how small. And remember, every step you take toward your own happiness is a step away from their silence. Let's pause for a moment. If this resonates with you, if you're ready to stop neglecting your life and start prioritizing yourself, I want you to like this video. Comment number 1 below if you're ready to reclaim your time and energy. And don't forget to subscribe for more strategies and insights on how to build a life you love, regardless of who's paying attention. Their silence doesn't define you, your actions do. So take the first step today, because the best way to respond to being ignored isn't to chase after them, it's to chase after your own potential. Stay with me, because in the conclusion, we're tying it all together and showing you how these 5 mistakes can become your greatest teachers. You won't want to miss this final step in your journey to growth and resilience. So we've come to the end of this journey together. A journey through the 5 biggest mistakes you must avoid when someone ignores you. Let's take a moment to reflect on what we've uncovered. Think back to mistake 1, overreacting and seeking instant validation. We learned that acting impulsively out of fear only hands over your power. When you pause, reflect, and respond with composure, you demonstrate strength and self-respect. Then there was mistake 2, internalizing their behavior. We explored how their silence is often a reflection of them, not you. You are not defined by someone else's actions, you are defined by how you respond to them. Mistake 3 was escalating the silence. Remember how we talked about the toxic cycle that silence can create. When you choose connection over confrontation, you break free from that destructive loop. Then came mistake 4, overanalyzing every detail. We learned how overanalysis is a mental trap that amplifies our insecurities and wastes our energy. Finally, mistake 5, neglecting your own life showed us that the greatest gift you can give yourself is attention to your dreams, your growth, your happiness. When you focus on living fully, their silence becomes irrelevant. These aren't just mistakes, they're opportunities. Each of them holds a powerful lesson about self-worth, communication, and resilience. When you approach these moments with the right mindset, you transform what feels like rejection into a chance to rise stronger, wiser, and more self-assured. Their silence isn't the end of your story. It's just a chapter, one that you get to write your way out of. But let's be honest, knowing these lessons is one thing, applying them is another. It's not easy to stay composed when someone ignores you. It's not easy to resist the pull of overanalysis or the urge to seek validation. But here's the truth. Growth isn't about taking perfect steps. It's about taking small, consistent steps, even when it's hard. So where do you go from here? How do you take what you've learned and apply it to your own life? Start by asking yourself this: which of these mistakes resonates with me the most? Maybe you've been chasing after someone's attention, neglecting your own needs in the process. Or maybe you've been caught in a spiral of overthinking, letting their silence take up space in your mind. Whatever it is, acknowledge it. Awareness is the first step toward change. Next, commit to taking action. Choose one mistake to focus on this week and make a conscious effort to avoid it. If you tend to overreact, practice pausing before you respond. If you've been neglecting your own life, make a list of goals or activities you want to prioritize. Remember, change doesn't happen overnight, but every step you take brings you closer to becoming the person you want to be. And here's one more thing to keep in mind. You're not alone in this. Every one of us has struggled with being ignored at some point. We've all felt the sting of silence and wrestled with the insecurities it brings up. But together we can rise above it. Together we can learn to navigate these moments with grace and strength. Let me ask you this. What would your life look like if you stopped letting their silence control you? What could you achieve if you redirected that energy toward your own growth and happiness? The possibilities are endless. And the best part, you don't need their attention or validation to start. You already have everything you need within you. If this journey has resonated with you, if you found clarity, inspiration, or even just a spark of hope, let me know by liking this video. Comment number 1 below to show that you're ready to take back your power and live life on your terms. And don't forget to subscribe for more insights and strategies on building resilience, confidence, and connection. Together, we're creating a community that thrives on growth and self-worth. Thank you for being here, for showing up for yourself, and for being willing to grow. I hope this video has given you tools to turn their silence into your strength. Remember, you are so much more than someone's response, or lack thereof. You are worthy, you are resilient, and you are unstoppable. Until next time, stay strong, stay grounded, and keep choosing growth. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.